Stop calling it patience. God may be showing you a boundary. Introduction. Maybe you do not need more patience. What if the thing you keep calling patience is actually fear? Fear of disappointing people. Fear of conflict. Fear of being called selfish. Fear of losing a relationship. Fear that God will judge you for finally saying no. You keep praying for more strength to tolerate the situation, but perhaps God is not asking you to tolerate it anymore. Perhaps He is trying to show you where the limit should have been. That possibility is uncomfortable because it changes the entire meaning of your suffering. You believed that staying silent made you mature. You believed that continuing to help made you faithful. You believed that forgiving without consequences made you Christ-like. You believed that enduring the same disrespect proved that your love was real. But there is a dangerous point where patience stops being spiritual strength and becomes emotional self-abandonment. There is a point where mercy becomes permission. There is a point where forgiveness becomes access without accountability. There is a point where your desire to keep the peace begins destroying your own peace. And there is a point where helping someone no longer helps them. It only protects them from the consequences that might finally awaken them. Many good Christians are emotionally exhausted because they have been taught only one side of love: give, serve, forgive, stay, sacrifice, be patient. But they were not taught enough about discernment. They were not taught that Jesus withdrew. They were not taught that He allowed people to walk away. They were not taught that He did not entrust Himself to everyone. They were not taught that love can remain pure while access becomes limited. You can have compassion and still say no. You can forgive and still require change. You can love someone and stop rescuing them. You can pray for someone and refuse to remain inside their chaos. You can care deeply and still recognize that the burden does not belong to you. This message is not permission to become cruel. It is not permission to leave every difficult relationship. It is not permission to punish people who disappoint you. It is a call to stop using patience as an excuse to ignore patterns that are destroying your mind, your peace, your identity, and your spiritual health. Because God may not be asking you to become harder. He may be asking you to become clearer. And clarity can feel harsh when you have spent your life disappearing for everyone else. 1. When patience starts protecting the problem. Patience is valuable when it gives someone room to grow. It becomes dangerous when it gives someone permission to remain the same. This is the first distinction you must understand. A person makes a mistake. They recognize it. They apologize. They change their behavior. That is a situation where patience can help restore the relationship. But when the same person repeats the same behavior, gives the same apology, creates the same emotional pressure, and expects the same immediate forgiveness, you are no longer dealing with a single mistake. You are dealing with a pattern. Patterns must be evaluated differently. A mistake can be corrected. A pattern must be confronted. A mistake may require grace. A pattern may require structure. A mistake may need time. A pattern may need consequences. Many compassionate people remain trapped because they evaluate repeated behavior as though every incident were new. They focus only on the latest apology. They ignore the history. They listen to the explanation. They forget the previous promises. They see the person crying and immediately doubt their own pain. This is how destructive cycles continue. The person learns that emotion is enough. They do not need to change. They only need to appear sorry. They do not need to rebuild trust. They only need to remind you that forgiveness is biblical. They do not need to respect your limit. They only need to make you feel guilty for having one. Real repentance is not measured by the intensity of an apology. It is measured by the direction of behavior. A person who is truly changing may still struggle, but their response becomes different. They take responsibility. They stop blaming you for reacting to what they did. They become interested in the effect of their behavior, not only in escaping the consequence. They respect the fact that trust may take time. They do not demand immediate access. They understand that forgiveness does not erase reality. When none of these signs appear, your patience may be protecting the problem. This can happen in families. One person repeatedly creates financial emergencies. Another person repeatedly rescues them. The rescuer believes they are helping, but the help removes the need for responsibility. The person making the bad decisions never faces the full consequence because someone else absorbs it. This is not always love. Sometimes it is enabling. Enabling happens when your help makes it easier for another person to continue a harmful pattern. You solve the problem they created. You lie to protect their reputation. You complete the work they neglected. You pay the debt they accumulated. You calm the people they offended. You carry the guilt they refuse to face. You prevent the crisis from reaching them. Then you wonder why nothing changes. Nothing changes because the system still works for them. They make the decision. You pay the emotional price. They receive relief. You receive exhaustion. They continue. You pray for more patience. But perhaps patience is not the next step. Perhaps the next step is allowing responsibility to return to the person it belongs to. That can feel cruel because you are accustomed to interpreting discomfort as harm. But allowing an adult to experience the natural result of their choices is not automatically cruelty. Sometimes discomfort is the beginning of growth. The prodigal son did not awaken while everything was comfortable. He awakened when reality became impossible to ignore. His consequences forced him to see where his decisions had taken him. If someone had repeatedly protected him from every difficult result, he might have remained lost much longer. This does not mean you should create unnecessary suffering. It means you should stop assuming that removing every consequence is always compassionate. Sometimes the consequence is the teacher your rescue keeps interrupting. This pattern also appears in emotional relationships. Someone insults you. Later they apologize. You forgive. Then they insult you again. You forgive again. Eventually, forgiveness becomes expected. They assume you will remain available no matter what happens. Your silence communicates that the relationship will not change. Your patience teaches them that there is no real cost. You may believe you are keeping peace, but peace without truth is only temporary silence. Real peace requires honesty. A healthy boundary introduces honesty into the relationship. It says, "If you begin insulting me, I will end the conversation. If you continue sharing my private information, I will stop telling you personal things. If you repeatedly borrow money without repayment, I will not lend more. If you call only when you want me to rescue you, I may not always respond. If you refuse responsibility, I cannot continue pretending everything is normal." These statements do not control another person. A boundary is not about controlling what they do. It is about deciding what you will do in response. You cannot force someone to speak respectfully. You can leave when they refuse. You cannot force someone to become honest. You can reduce access when they repeatedly lie. You cannot force someone to manage their money. You can refuse to finance their irresponsibility. You cannot force someone to value your time. You can stop making your time endlessly available. This is the difference between a boundary and a threat. A threat tries to frighten someone into submission. A boundary calmly explains the action you will take to protect what you are responsible for. People who benefited from your lack of limits may not like this. They may accuse you of changing. They may say you are cold. They may say you are acting superior. They may use your faith against you. They may remind you that Christians should forgive. But forgiveness is not the same as pretending the pattern does not exist. Forgiveness releases revenge. It does not remove wisdom. Forgiveness cleans your heart. It does not automatically restore trust. Forgiveness may be immediate. Trust is rebuilt through consistent behavior. A person may be forgiven and still lose access. A person may be loved and still face consequences. A person may remain valuable before God and still be unsafe in a close relationship. These truths can exist together. You must stop thinking that every limit means hatred. Sometimes a limit is the most honest form of love available. Without it, resentment continues growing. You keep saying yes while feeling anger. You keep helping while secretly feeling trapped. You keep smiling while your body is becoming exhausted. That is not sustainable. Eventually, the love you are trying to protect becomes poisoned by resentment. A boundary can prevent that. It allows you to give from freedom rather than fear. It allows you to help intentionally rather than compulsively. It allows you to remain kind without becoming controlled. Ask yourself honestly, has my patience produced growth? Has this person become more responsible? Do their apologies lead to different behavior? Am I protecting them from consequences they need to face? Does the relationship remain peaceful only because I never say no? Would they still value me if I stopped rescuing them? Your answers may reveal something painful. You may discover that what you called patience became permission. Do not respond with shame. You were probably trying to love people with the understanding you had. But God may be giving you a new understanding now. He may be showing you that love is not only softness. Love also tells the truth. Love does not rejoice in destructive patterns. Love does not require one person to carry all the consequences. Love can say, I care about you, but I will not continue helping this behavior. That is not rejection. That is clarity. And clarity may be the first real opportunity for change the relationship has experienced in years. 2. When keeping the peace is destroying you, many people believe they are peaceful when they are actually afraid. They avoid confrontation. They agree quickly. They apologize unnecessarily. They remain silent when something hurts. They call this patience. But often, it is not patience. It is emotional survival. You may have learned that the safest version of you was the easiest version. The version who did not complain. The version who did not need much. The version who helped everyone. The version who accepted disappointment quietly. The version who kept the room calm. Perhaps people praised you for being mature, but they may have been praising your ability to disappear. You learned to monitor other people's emotions. A change in tone made you nervous. A short message made you question yourself. A disappointed face made you feel responsible. You became highly sensitive to the emotional atmosphere. This may look like empathy, but sometimes it is fear. You are not simply noticing what people feel. You are trying to prevent their feelings from becoming dangerous to you. That is why saying no can feel so intense. You are not only refusing a request. Your body believes you are risking connection. Your nervous system may interpret disappointment as rejection. It may interpret anger as danger. It may interpret disagreement as abandonment. That is why a healthy boundary can produce unhealthy guilt. You say no, and immediately you feel like a bad person. You protect your time, and you feel selfish. You ask for respect, and you feel demanding. You need space, and you feel cruel. But feeling guilty does not always mean you are guilty. This is one of the most important psychological and spiritual lessons you can learn. Guilt is an emotion. Sometimes it reveals real wrongdoing. If you lie, manipulate, humiliate, or intentionally harm someone, guilt may lead you toward repentance. But guilt can also be the emotional reaction of an old role losing control. You may feel guilty because you stopped doing what everyone expected. You may feel guilty because you are no longer overfunctioning. You may feel guilty because another person is disappointed. You may feel guilty because you are doing something unfamiliar. Unfamiliar does not mean sinful. Discomfort does not mean disobedience. Another person's anger does not automatically mean you acted wrongly. You must evaluate the action, not only the feeling. Ask yourself, did I lie? Did I insult the person? Did I act from revenge? Did I intentionally abandon a real responsibility? Or did I simply tell the truth? Did I refuse something I could not carry? Did I protect my family, health, time, or emotional safety? Did I stop participating in a repeated unhealthy pattern? These questions help separate conviction from conditioning. God's conviction is usually clear and specific. It may show you that your tone was harsh. It may show you that your timing was unwise. It may show you that you spoke from anger. But conviction does not normally demand that you erase yourself. Toxic guilt is different. It is vague. It tells you that you are bad for having needs. It tells you that you must fix everyone's feelings. It tells you that you must explain until everyone approves. It tells you that love requires permanent availability. It tells you that saying no makes you selfish. You can apologize for your tone and still keep the boundary. You can admit that you spoke poorly and still refuse the request. You can understand another person's pain and still protect yourself. You can accept that they are disappointed and still remain firm. Emotional maturity allows two truths to exist at the same time. I care about you, and my answer is no. I understand that you are hurt, and I need space. I forgive you, and trust must be rebuilt. I love my family, and I cannot solve every crisis. I am willing to talk, and I will leave if the conversation becomes disrespectful. These statements may sound aggressive to someone accustomed to disappearing. But they are not aggressive. They are honest. Clarity feels cruel when your old identity was built around pleasing people. Many people over-explain every boundary because they want permission. They say no and then give 10 reasons. They describe their schedule, their finances, their health, their emotions, their intentions, their history. They hope the other person will finally agree that the boundary is reasonable. But some people do not want understanding. They want access. Every reason becomes another argument. You say you are tired. They tell you to rest later. You say you have plans. They tell you to cancel. You say you need money. They promise to repay. You say you need space. They accuse you of avoiding them. The conversation continues until your no becomes a yes. This is why a boundary does not always require a long explanation. No, I cannot do that. I am not available tonight. I will answer tomorrow. I will not discuss this while being insulted. I have made my decision. These are complete statements. You do not need to put your entire life on trial to justify one limit. Jesus did not explain himself endlessly. He did not answer every accusation. He did not remain in every place where people demanded access. He withdrew. He stayed silent. He walked away. He continued his purpose even when people misunderstood him. This does not mean you should use Jesus to justify emotional avoidance. It means you should stop believing that constant availability is proof of love. A deeper issue may be hiding beneath your difficulty saying no. Your value may be connected to being needed. When people call you, you feel important. When you rescue them, you feel valuable. When you solve problems, you feel secure. You may secretly fear that if you stop helping, people will stop choosing you. So you keep giving, even when giving destroys you. You remain exhausted because exhaustion feels safer than rejection. But love based entirely on usefulness is unstable. If someone values you only when you are available, generous, agreeable, or rescuing them, the relationship may be built more on access than affection. A boundary reveals this. Healthy people may feel disappointed, but they can eventually respect your limit. They may disagree, but they do not need to destroy your character. They may struggle, but they remain concerned about your well-being. Manipulative people often react differently. They may attack your identity. They may remind you of everything they have done for you. They may involve other people. They may accuse you of abandoning God, family, or responsibility. They may use your compassion as a weapon against you. Their reaction can be painful, but it is also information. It shows that they did not only appreciate your help, they felt entitled to it. Your task is not to become emotionless. You may feel guilty. You may shake. You may question yourself. You may cry after the conversation. Courage is not the absence of these feelings. Courage is remaining aligned with truth while the feelings settle. Each healthy boundary teaches your mind and body something new. Someone was disappointed, and you survived. Someone misunderstood you, and you remained safe. Someone called you selfish, and God still knew your heart. You said no, and the world continued. This is how the old pattern loses power. You stop treating every negative reaction as an emergency. You stop believing you must repair every emotion. You begin to understand that another person's feelings are real, but they are not always your responsibility. You can be compassionate without surrendering. You can listen without obeying. You can care without carrying. You can love without losing yourself. That is not selfishness. That is emotional and spiritual maturity. 3. The boundary God may be asking you to set. Recognizing the problem is not enough. A boundary must become practical. Many people know they are being overused, disrespected, or emotionally controlled, but they remain stuck because they imagine a boundary must be dramatic. They think it means ending every relationship, blocking everyone, starting an argument, making a public declaration. But most healthy boundaries are simple. They begin with one clear decision. First, identify the exact behavior. Do not begin with a general statement such as, "You never respect me." That may express your frustration, but it does not clearly describe the limit. Name the specific behavior. Shouting, insults, unannounced visits, repeated financial requests, late-night calls, sharing private information, expecting immediate responses, making decisions for you, pressuring you through religion, refusing responsibility. The clearer the behavior, the clearer the boundary. Instead of saying, "You need to respect me," say, "If you insult me, I will end the conversation." Instead of saying, "Stop taking advantage of me," say, "I will no longer lend money." Instead of saying, "You demand too much," say, "I do not answer non-emergency calls after this time." Instead of saying, "You cannot be trusted," say, "I will not share private information with you anymore." A boundary focuses on what you control. You cannot control whether someone shouts. You can control whether you stay. You cannot control whether someone becomes angry. You can control whether you continue arguing. You cannot control whether someone wastes money. You can control whether you finance the next crisis. You cannot control whether someone spreads information. You can control how much information they receive. This is where many people confuse boundaries with demands. A demand says, "You must change." A boundary says, "You are free to choose, and I will respond accordingly." The power of the boundary is not in the sentence. It is in the follow-through. A boundary without action becomes another request the person learns to ignore. You say you will leave if the shouting begins. The shouting begins. You remain for another hour. You say you will not lend more money. Another emergency appears. You lend again. You say you need space. The person sends an emotional message. You respond immediately. Each time this happens, two things occur. The other person learns that pressure works. You learn that your own words are not trustworthy. This weakens your confidence. That is why your first boundary should be realistic. Do not announce a consequence you are not prepared to carry out. Start small if necessary. Delay one response. End one disrespectful call. Refuse one responsibility that does not belong to you. Stop sharing one category of private information. Allow one adult to solve one problem without rescuing them. Small actions can change a relationship because they interrupt the old structure. Expect resistance. People adapt to roles. Perhaps your role was the rescuer, the peacemaker, the financial helper, the listener, the person who attended everything, the person who forgave first, the person who never complained. When you change that role, the system becomes uncomfortable. Someone may tell you that you are not acting like yourself. What they may really mean is that you are no longer acting like the version of you they could easily control. Do not immediately assume everyone who reacts badly is evil. Change can surprise healthy people too. The important question is, what happens after the first reaction? Can they reflect? Can they respect the limit even if they disagree? Can they take responsibility? Can they adjust? Or do they continue escalating until you surrender? That response reveals the health of the relationship. Not every boundary requires complete separation. Sometimes the correct boundary is reduced access. You may remain polite, but stop sharing vulnerable information. You may see the person in group settings rather than privately. You may communicate less frequently. You may help in a limited way instead of taking over. You may forgive while requiring a long period of consistent behavior before trust returns. This is where you must understand the difference between forgiveness, reconciliation, and trust. Forgiveness is something you can choose before God. It releases revenge. It refuses to let hatred control your life. Reconciliation requires two people. It requires honesty, responsibility, and willingness from both sides. Trust is built through repeated evidence. You can forgive without immediate reconciliation. You can reconcile at a limited level without restoring complete trust. You can love someone without giving them the same access they once had. Jesus loved broadly, but he did not trust everyone equally. There were crowds. There were disciples. There were closer relationships. Love did not require identical access. Wisdom created different levels of closeness. Your boundaries should be guided by wisdom, not revenge. Do not use distance to punish. Do not remain silent only to make someone anxious. Do not threaten to leave so they will chase you. Do not spread private information to prove that you were right. Do not create a public campaign. A godly boundary does not need cruelty. You can protect yourself without trying to destroy someone else. You can walk away without humiliating them. You can say no without attacking their worth. You can become firm without becoming bitter. This matters because anger often appears after awakening. When you finally see how much you tolerated, you may feel furious. You may feel used. You may feel ashamed that you remained so long. You may want everyone to understand your side, but not everyone will. Some people may change the story. They may tell others that you abandoned them. They may present your boundary as an attack. They may call your clarity pride. If your peace depends on everyone understanding you, you are still controlled by approval. At some point, you must allow God to know the truth, even when people choose a false version. You are responsible for your integrity. You are not responsible for controlling your reputation in every mind. Seek wise counsel. Choose someone who is biblically grounded and emotionally mature. Avoid people who automatically tell you to tolerate everything. Also, avoid people who automatically tell you to end every relationship. Wise counsel examines the pattern, the responsibility, the danger, and the possible consequences. Describe the full pattern, not only the latest incident. One event can be misunderstood. Repeated events reveal structure. Writing things down can help. When the situation becomes calm, guilt may cause you to minimize what happened. You may convince yourself that it was not serious. Then the cycle begins again. A written record allows you to evaluate reality instead of relying only on the emotion of the moment. Finally, change your prayer. Stop asking only, "God, give me more patience." Ask, "God, show me what belongs to me. Show me where love has become fear. Show me where help has become enabling. Show me where forgiveness has been confused with access. Show me where my silence is protecting dysfunction. Give me the courage to act on the truth you reveal." The answer may not arrive as a dramatic sign. It may appear as a repeated pattern you can no longer deny. It may appear as growing conviction. It may appear through wise counsel. It may appear through the loss of peace every time you violate your own limit. It may appear in the realization that nothing changes because your response never changes. Perhaps you have been waiting for the other person to become different, but God may be asking you to become different first. Not colder, not crueler, clearer. You do not need to stop loving. You need to stop calling self-abandonment love. You do not need to stop forgiving. You need to stop calling unlimited access forgiveness. You do not need to reject patience. You need to stop using patience to excuse a pattern that requires a boundary. Maybe God is not asking you to endure more. Maybe He is showing you where obedience now requires a limit. And the boundary you are afraid to set may be the very door through which peace finally enters.